The morning sun cast long shadows across the sacred dueling grounds as Kira Shadowmere tightened her grip on the ancient blade passed down through 7 generations of her clan. Across the circle of worn stones, her opponent stood with infuriating calm, a young man barely past his 20th year who claimed no family name, no heritage, no right to challenge the customs of the Highland clans. "Last chance to withdraw your challenge, outsider," Kira called out, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd of clan members. "You know nothing of our ways." The stranger, who had given only the name Aldrich, shook his head slowly. His plainclothes and unremarkable features marked him as common-born, yet something in his steady gaze made even the eldest clan warriors shift uncomfortably. "I cannot," Aldrich replied simply. "What your clan plans to do to the villages below violates the old laws. I stand by my challenge." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. For 3 days the young man had argued against the clan's decision to claim the fertile lowland territories by force, citing ancient accords that most had forgotten. When words failed, he had invoked the right of trial by combat, a right that none could deny, regardless of birth. Elder Thane Morvek stepped forward, his weathered hands raised for silence. "The challenge has been accepted. Let the duel begin, and may the ancestors guide the worthy blade." Kira moved first, her sword singing through the air in a perfect arc that would have felled any ordinary opponent. But Aldrich flowed aside like water, his own blade, plain steel without ornamentation, deflecting her strike with minimal effort. They danced across the stones, steel ringing against steel. Kira's technique was flawless, honed by years of training in the clan's secret fighting forms. Yet somehow Aldrich matched her move for move, as if he could read her intentions before she acted. Growing frustrated, Kira pressed her attack more aggressively. Her blade bore the sacred runes of her lineage, symbols that supposedly granted strength to those of true Highland blood. She channeled all her fury into a devastating downward strike that would end the duel decisively. Aldrich raised his sword to block, but the force of her blow drove his guard down. Kira's blade sliced across his left palm, drawing a thin line of crimson blood. The moment her sword touched his blood, everything changed. The ancient runes carved into her blade erupted in brilliant golden light, blazing like captured sunlight. The sacred symbols seemed to writhe and shift, revealing hidden markings that had been invisible for centuries. The light grew so intense that Kira stumbled backward, her eyes watering from the radiance. But it was the reaction of her clan that truly shook her to her core. One by one, every member of Clan Shadowmere dropped to their knees. Elder Morvek's face had gone ashen as he pressed his forehead to the ground. The proud warriors who had trained her since childhood now prostrated themselves before the bleeding stranger. "Impossible," Kira whispered, her sword trembling in her grasp. The runes on her blade pulsed once more and began to form words in the ancient script, words that made her blood run cold. "Behold, the true king returns." Aldrich looked down at his bleeding palm with what seemed like resignation rather than surprise. "I had hoped to avoid this," he said quietly. You're... Kira couldn't finish the words. "The last of the Dragonlord line," Elder Morvek spoke. From his position on the ground, his voice filled with awe and terror. "The bloodline we thought extinct for 300 years. Aldrich wrapped a strip of cloth around his wounded hand. "My family has lived quietly in the lowland villages for generations. We wanted no part of the old feuds, the old wars. But when I learned of your clan's plans to claim lands that were never yours," he shook his head. "Some responsibilities cannot be abandoned." The implications crashed over Kira like an avalanche. According to the most ancient laws that predated even the Highland clans, a proven descendant of the Dragon Lords held dominion over all the mountain territories. Her clan's claim to leadership, her family's power, everything she had known, was built on the assumption that royal bloodline had ended forever. "The blade knows truth from lies," Morvek said, finally rising to his feet. "The runes respond only to the touch of royal blood. We have no choice but to acknowledge his authority." Around the circle, other clan members began to rise, their faces showing a mixture of shock, fear, and curiosity. Some of the younger warriors looked ready to challenge this revelation, but the older ones who remembered the ancient stories held them back with sharp gestures. "What will you do with us?" Kira asked, her warrior's pride warring with the reality of her situation. Aldrich considered her question carefully. "Nothing that your clan does not choose for itself. The old ways of rule by conquest and fear died with my ancestors for good reason, but the protection of innocent villages from those who would abuse their power—" He met her eyes steadily. "That duty remains. And if we refuse to acknowledge your claim—" A sad smile crossed Aldrich's face. "Then you prove that some lessons must be learned the hard way. But I hope it won't come to that." Kira looked down at her blade, where the golden runes were slowly fading back to their dormant state. Everything she had believed about her world, her clan's rightful place in it, had changed in an instant. The stranger, the king, had not even claimed victory in their duel, yet he had won something far greater. "The villages will remain untouched," she said finally, sheathing her sword. "We withdraw our claim to the lowlands." Aldrich nodded gravely. "Thank you. Perhaps in time we can find a better way forward, together." As the crowd began to disperse, Kira caught Elder Morvek's arm. "How did you recognize him so quickly?" The old man's eyes held depths of memory she had never seen before. "Because, child, I was there the night his great-grandfather died. I saw those same runes blaze when they cut down the last known heir. I never thought to see their light again. In this lifetime." Kira watched Aldrich walking away toward the lowland paths, his simple clothes and humble bearing unchanged despite the revelation of his royal blood. A true king, she realized, was not one who demanded a throne, but one who accepted the burden when duty called. The Highland clans would need to learn new ways of thinking, and perhaps under the guidance of a reluctant king who preferred village life to royal power, they might finally find the peace that had eluded them for centuries.